Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, Conquering CLE Compliance, Mastering New York Year-End Reports, and California's New CLE Rules. Just a quick note that this presentation is confidential. And some housekeeping. This presentation will be about 45 minutes with some Q&A. All participants are muted. We are going to invite for questions, so in your GoToWebinar panel, find your questions area and you can key them in. If we aren't able to respond to your questions on the webinar, we're going to follow up with an email. The webinar is being recorded and it will be sent to you via email following the presentation. Here is our agenda. We'll be talking about some of your favorite topics in CLE, New York and California. Now for your speakers. My name is Adam Stein, and I'm a Senior Product Advisor at Litera. I'm happy to be joined today by a couple of colleagues.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Romanishin, and I'm the Product Owner at Litera, responsible for CE Manager.
And hi, everyone. I'm Brandy Lee Miller, and I am the Director of Attorney Licensing and CLE Compliance at CLE LLP.
Good to be in the company of CLE experts. Eric and Brandy Lee, thank you for participating, and thanks to everyone who's joined our webinar today. Now, let's go conquer some CLE. Throughout today's presentation, we'll use Litera CE Manager to visualize examples for these topics. I'm going to start with New York year-end reporting. If you are a CLE accredited provider in New York, your year-end report and activity table are due on January 31st, 2024. These reports are to include information about the CLE programs you offered in the year 2023 in which you issued New York CLE certificates of attendance. The year-end report is a one-page report that summarizes counts of certain types of programs. The activity table is a more comprehensive report that gives details about each of the programs that you've offered. Depending on how many you offered, it can be a lengthy report. Okay, so be honest with yourselves. How many of you panic when you think about putting these reports together? Good news is we have the remedy and we'll get you to your happy place. The purpose of today's webinar is to give you information and methods that will make this year's reporting easy to do. To start with, if you're using CE Manager, I'm going to walk through how to access the reports. For those that are not familiar, CE Manager's purpose is to automate many of the processes you deal with for CLE compliancy and accredited provider reporting. For those that do not have CE Manager, as an accredited provider in New York, you have access on the New York State CLE Board website to fillable PDFs so that you can fill out your own reports. In fact, if you're on the New York Board's email list as an accredited provider, they just emailed out these links on Tuesday. But if you are using CE Manager, you're about to see that it will automatically populate the forms for you. So from the administrator's homepage, you can click into the reports area, and then you can click into provider reports. Once you do that, you have New York activity table and the summary page. Notice mine are at the top, and that's because I've starred these as favorites. You can do that by clicking any report and turning it orange. I'm going to first click into the activity table. And then I'm going to click into generate report. The report automatically populates with correct numbers and all the information based on the data that's in CE Manager. Now I'm going to go and run the year-end report. There's the summary page. Again, generate report. Eric is now going to discuss what is new in these reports this year and how they've changed from last year. Eric, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So the new look to the 2023 reports, we do have some cosmetic changes and some updated questions, which include the new cybersecurity, privacy, and data protection requirements. Looking at the summary page, we can see as of right now, questions 1 through 5 have no major changes. The biggest change that we've seen, though, is with question 8. Question 8 is updated to include the counts for cybersecurity ethics, which is 8C, and cybersecurity general, which is 8D. The programs tallied here will be broken up to the credits earned via cybersecurity for diversity and elimination of bias, and ethics and professionalism. Note that in CE Manager, if we scroll up top, the provider information on the summary page must be inputted directly on the screen when you print the report. The fields for address, contact person, and telephone and email are open text fields. Once you open this report and enter the data in one time, CE Manager will retain that data for future times when you generate the report. So you can easily update the content information as needed.
Great, Eric. And one particular setup item when running the year-end report in CE Manager is to make a selection regarding the participant count. Brandy Lee, can you talk a little bit about this?
Sure, Adam, and we have clarified this information that I'm sharing with Mary Jane Kimmeth at the CLE board. We want to pick the choice here, the option to for only New York participants, New York certificates awarded. The guidance for the annual report tells us that for each format in which the program was presented, we want to enter onto our report the number of attendees that were issued a New York CLE certificate of attendance for the particular format that we're reporting on. So while it might be helpful to have a report of all of the attendees and those numbers, what we are supposed to report is just the New York certificates awarded.
Great. So as you're preparing the report, ultimately for the board, you'll select the only NY licensed and then generate report. I'm going to continue to talk about some other details in the year-end report, but first Eric's going to point out what's new in the activity table.
Sure. For the activity table has 2 additional line items for each program. You have a line item that denotes a yes or no question, whether the program has cybersecurity, privacy, and data protection ethics credits, and a line for yes or no for whether the program has cybersecurity, privacy, and data protection general. Both will automatically populate yes or no based on your credit data in CE Manager. One thing often asked about the activity table, which is not new but is very important, is what is actually the other formats that we see listed on the activity table, such as formats 1 through 6. So if we're looking at the different formats, we can see on the left-hand side, the right-hand side, that they're broken up and you have the attendance populated in each. A bit of an explanation about each format here. When format 1 is populated, this is mapped for a traditional live classroom. And the CE Manager formats for each session that map to this are the live classroom, college course, group live, committee and firm meetings, and conference.
Brandy, was there
any? Yes, sorry. Mute. We just want to point out here that the board has clarified to us what live classroom means, and that is when all faculty members are physically together in the same location with at least one attendee in the same location, and that's only group participation physically seated together. So that is when you have a traditional live classroom setting. all faculty members, and at least one attendee in the same location.
The following two formats, format 2 and 3, are very similar with just one distinction. So the format name for format 2 and 3 are live simultaneous transmission, where format 2 are questions allowed and format 3 where questions are not allowed. Now, the CLE Manager session formats that are mapped to these two are group internet-based, live satellite broadcast, teleconference, video conference, web conference, simultaneous webcast, and webinar. For format 2 and 3, depending on where this gets populated, depends on the checkbox for yes or no for questions allowed when you're creating the sessions.
And in CLE Manager, when you're choosing your format for the program, the board has clarified that we need to look at the underlying technology of how we are delivering live simultaneous transmission. It's considered live simultaneous transmission if you're using a platform like Zoom, GoToMeeting, any webinar platform where it's truly web-based, or a teleconference where people can interact with it and ask questions. It's not necessarily being able to see and hear everyone, but it's being able to ask questions and be interactive with the presenter. But again, formats 2 and 3 are the underlying technology of how you're delivering.
For format 4, this is a fully interactive video conference. And the two main CLE Manager sessions that map to this format 4 are video conference approved for newly admitted attorneys and live simultaneous video conference.
And this format would be what you would select when you truly are using video conferencing technology where it's not web-based. These are the cameras and the video conferencing units in conference rooms in a lot of our firm offices. And this, the result of this is sometimes the output is the Brady Bunch view, we call it, where every participant, every faculty member across every location can see and hear every participant and faculty member in all the locations. And this is a group participation method. There, everyone is physically seated together in the conference rooms on video conference. No one is a remote attendee who's dialed in by teleconference or participating by Zoom from outside of those live video conference locations.
For format 5, this format is your on-demand or recorded courses. And the CLE Manager sessions that map to this are audio file, digital video disk, online course, online video, and video file. Now, when we're referencing on-demand or recorded courses, these are going to be those sessions where you are uploading and attaching a media file, whether it is a MP4 video, an interactive SCORM package, or an audio file that a user is just listening to, for example, a legal podcast.
And you would be uploading those either to CLE Manager for your users to view them through the system, where you would take advantage of the internal system, prompts to have an embedded code or to interact through the pop-up button to track their attendance, so it would be compliant with the New York rules. Or this is you playing back the video with a group of people in a physical setting in one conference room, watching the video and capturing the attendance there. You might not have the file in the system, but you could also note something as pre-recorded and on demand if you are tracking their completion in a compliant way in a physical setting.
For our last format, format 6, is basically everything else, which is rightly so set as other. The common CLE Manager sessions that map to this are distant learning, independent study, mock trial, moot court, anything that doesn't fall into the other previous 5 categories. For format 6, we see mostly research, pro bono, writing essays, anything that's out of the norm for us, a course format.
Eric and Brandy Lee, thank you. Plainly, formats are important as you put together the report, and those are some good explanations. We're going to dig into some more details of the activity table and show how it gets populated based on a few examples. But before we do, let's take a quick poll. So the question is, how much time do you spend prepping your reports before finally turning them in? You should see a poll come up now. It's open, and we'll let you all put your answers in. And I'm going to see the results. I don't see anyone, but oh yeah, there we go. Now I see it. Okay. On my end, I can see it's like being at a baseball game where you see the people running for the bases. Can tell you, we'll give it a couple more. I'm not going to reveal yet. We've got 59% in voted, so keep them coming. I can tell you that the one that's least is less than 2 hours. So people are definitely spending more than 2 hours. Got about almost 70% votes. Let's get a few more votes in. We'll reveal the results here. Okay, looks like the poll was closed. So thanks for participating, those that did. And I think that you're seeing the poll results according to what I see on the screen here, but I'll call. So the popular one, almost 50%, 47 to be exact, is approximately half of you spend 2 to 10 hours on it. You can probably also see that the next range is 24% spend 10 to 20 hours, 14% spend more than 20 hours. So you are spending a considerable amount of time. I think what we do see is that sometimes it's the larger firms that spend the most time because you offer so many programs. Although at the same time, I know many small and medium firms that have lots of professional development courses that they offer. And so therefore they have to spend just as much time as even a larger firm might. So thanks for participating in the poll. Hopefully that gives you an idea where you fit within your peers. What we're going to do now is go to some specific examples in the activity table to give you some idea of how to verify things. So I'm going to point out in this activity table legalities in digital media and all of the items that were marked for this one. Particularly, it's going to start with, I'm going to start with the format. So notice format 1, 2, and 4 were populated. So let's look up some things in CManager to verify our tallies. So what I'm going to do is go over to my course catalog. And in the learning section, you can find that. I'm actually just going to type digital, and that class will pop right up. I'm going to click into it. And we're going to see those simultaneous sessions that happened on February 1st. So in New York, we had a live classroom. In Chicago, it was live simultaneous video conference. And in Los Angeles, a web conference. I'm going to go over to the participants tab. If you're not aware, you can filter on the list of users. So we have quite a set of users, including another page. In this case, I'm going to first start with a filter of any one of these attendees who has a New York law license, because that's who you issued the certificates to, and that's the tallies we're looking for. Notice I've got 4 and an instructor. And if you recall from the actual activity table, 2, 1, and 1, that equals 4. To point out, the instructor or speaker does not tally on the report, and that is correct. So you're looking for the attendees. The other thing to look at is maybe per format and per location. So we'll dig into some of those details and give you some ideas. As we said, there's 3 locations, 3 different formats. For the New York location, it's a live classroom, and we know that that's format 1. So if I go into the participants, and this time in the user type, I'm going to sort, or rather filter by New York. So here's my New York attendees and the speaker. Again, the speaker doesn't count. So why is the tally 1 as opposed to 3? That's simply because Heather is the one that has the New York license. So she was issued the certificate. That's her 1 tally. As opposed to Tori and Darla don't have a New York license, so therefore they weren't issued a New York certificate. Let's go to another session, and that's the Los Angeles Web Conference. Okay, for that, this is format 2, and that is specifically because questions were allowed. So I'm going to click into it, and I'm actually going to go over to edit the session. And we see questions allowed. So if you recall from the format discussion before, format 2 is the questions allowed as yes, format 3 is no. If I were to change this to no, then that tally would move from format 2 to format 3. So you're seeing some of the ways that you can dig into some of that data. I'm going to go back over to the activity table, and we'll look at these portions. We looked at the formats and the tallies. Content appropriate for newly admitted attorneys. That's a yes. So where does that come from? All right, so here I'm going to take us actually over to our New York session. So I'm going back into my sessions themselves, and particularly I'm going to the New York one because I'm going to bring up the credits that we issued in New York for the New York certificates and down into the New York Law credits section. And we can see here newly admitted attorneys. Because that's there and because it's transitional, that's why it's marked yes for that first response in the activity table. A couple other things to notice here from the other listings there, and I'll quickly go back. Ethics and professional, diversity and inclusion, cybersecurity ethics, cybersecurity general. All these are listed here with yes, no's. And that data comes directly from the credits in the New York session in the New York credit area. And we can see, okay, we have an ethics, we don't have a diversity. We have a cybersecurity general, we don't have cybersecurity ethics. So all those things get populated appropriately.
And of course, Adam, on this screen, all of our admins know that they need to be sure to select the participation method of group or self-study based on the participation method or the format of the program so that that populates correctly on the certificates for our participants and presenters as well. So be sure not to miss that, everyone in the admin side.
That's a good call out, Brandy. So right here is that group participation in the participation method. Again, that's also in the New York session in the New York credits area. I want to point out the New York location. And in my case, I've selected NYC because it was in New York City. But if you're teaching a course in New York State, but it's in another county, we have all the counties listed, and you should select that. Also, financial hardship. Most of our accredited providers that use our software, we know, particularly law firms in general, whether you use CManager or not, usually don't offer this because the programs are free. But if by chance you are an accredited provider that does, you have the requests and grants, and those make it over to the report as well. So in these areas. And just to give a call out, this is a zoomed in version of that, so you can take a look at that. Again, all the formats we talked about in the tallies, all these particular line items. And then as we looked at in the credits section, the New York location, pick the county that's appropriate, financial hardship, pick out what's appropriate. Brandy pointed out the participation method. And then back to a zoom in on the activity table. Here's where your financial hardships show up if you use them, the county. And notice this note that's actually on the activity table that this is only from the live classroom and particularly regarding format 1, so not any of the other sessions. I'm now going to pass it over to Eric for some further details on the year-end summary page. So we're going to switch over from the activity table to that cover page for year-end. Eric?
Sure. So to go through the rows on the New York year-end summary page, I wanted to go through each line and then just discuss what each question means. For rows 1 and 2, these are for your traditional life formats, with row 1 being courses offered in New York State, and row 2 for courses offered outside of New York State. Moving down to rows 3 and 4, these are your live simultaneous transmission formats, such as simultaneous webcasts, with row 3 being for courses where questions were allowed, and 4 for programs where questions were not allowed. Row 5 is for your interactive video conference or fully interactive video conferences, such as the C Manager formats for video conference approved for newly admitted. So format row 5 is always going to be for format 4. Row 6, these are for your on-demand programs. And just to reference, these are for your sessions where you have uploaded a video, such as a recording of a live event that you had, your interactive scoring packages, or your audio files. Row 7 or question 7, this is going to be your count for courses with format 6, which are others such as pro bono and writing. Row 8, as we mentioned before, has been broken up into sub-questions where they've added 2 additional ones. So row A through D is going to pull your counts for courses that offered ethics credits, diversity and inclusion, cybersecurity ethics, and cybersecurity general.
Eric, thanks for that rundown. It's good to see all those rows and the call outs. Right now, Brandy Lee is going to talk about some strategies that she uses with her team and at her firm to audit the year-end report and the activity table. Brandy?
Sure, thanks, Adam. So the first thing that we do is we run the summary, the cover page, this that we're looking at now. And first, I look at the numbers, and we're looking to see, do we have numbers that seem okay in all of the fields where they're supposed to be? You know, we do not have any programs where questions are not allowed. So if there's something there or in other, that's the first red flag that something's wrong. So we just give this a once over to make sure that everything seems okay. And then we move on to the activity table, because that's really where the bulk of what the information we want to look at is. And here, I look at every single field in this spreadsheet, field by field, page by page, So first I go through and I look at the names of the programs. I'm looking for formatting to make sure that our formatting is consistent, that there's not typos or, the ransom note, capitals and lowercase letters, going through that just to make sure that the report is clean, that we've not made any mistakes on our end for that. So I do print this out first for myself, single-sided, and I mark it up by hand with the famous red pen. And then I start to go through each line. So now I've gone through all 50 plus pages looking at the names of the programs. Then I look at, is the content appropriate for newly admitted attorneys? Yes, the majority of our programs at CLE are appropriate for newly admitted attorneys. So we would not have a no. So a no would be another red flag, something to look at. And before I ever go back to the system, I mark up the physical report. And I do go through line by line, and I do that because my eye sees the same thing on every page for every program entry, so I don't get confused or sidetracked. And I do it when I can set aside the time in a big block to look at as much of the data as I can. And so I go through every one of these lines. Then I start to move over to the columns. If there's anything about financial aid or the number of hours, we don't have a financial aid policy because we don't charge for programs. So if there's a dollar amount or a yes in any of these boxes, that's a problem. And then I also start looking at the formats again, one by one. Yes, I'm going through every program 6 times, looking at the format boxes to make sure that the numbers are in the right place. And then I take that, and before I make corrections, I give it to another member of our team, and they look at the report themselves and run it and do the same check. And then we start to compare notes and we start to make those edits in the system. What are the edits that we need to make? What are the corrections that we need to make? Have we done something wrong along the way? Are we not understanding as a team what should be there? And then we prepare the report.
Randy, those are excellent tips. Sounds like one I caught particular was that you spent a lot of time red marking it as you described, but then you give it to a colleague, so you have a second pair of eyes on it, which I think is great.
Yeah, not everybody, has the ability to do that, but I think that when you can, to get a second set of eyes on it, it's really helpful, and that just helps us see the inconsistency sometimes in our entries, where we might have miscoded something or something like that. It's really helpful.
Definitely. Okay, so now, actually, Brandon, I want to ask you to maybe talk a little bit further because, we got the numbers, we've looked at all the lines, right? But now there's some additional information that has to be wrapped up together as you turn things in. So I've got this screen up here. You want to go over some of these, please?
So it seems obvious. You're preparing your report to turn in. It's got a checklist on it. It's got instructions. But I treat this now in the COVID and post-COVID times as if I was going to print it all out in hard copy and submit it in a FedEx box to the CLE board. First, I create a cover memo on firm letterhead that says, here's our annual report. Thanks so much. Let us know if there's any questions. And then I put the cover sheet, which is never listed in the instructions. You put the summary on top, that cover sheet with all your high level numbers. And then I put the activity table, print it out, double check, triple checked. And then you need to add in a description of your formats. We use a memo that describes each of our formats that the firm has approved as a provider to accredit programs and deliver them in. You might use a one-page description, but we'll put a slip sheet that says, description of formats and attendance verification procedures, and we put that in along with any relevant forms. So our affirmation form for remote attendees, a sign-in sheet that we might use for live in-person attendees, or any other means of communication. We've described it. We provided a copy of it. Then we have a slip sheet that says financial aid policy. And the next page is on letterhead and says, we don't have a financial aid policy because we don't charge a fee for CLE accredited programs. Then we choose a sample program, slip sheet, sample program. And that is something that we've discussed with our legal education team who creates and helps coordinate delivery of programs, that it is a good substantive program, that it meets all the criteria. They've cleared the materials, that everything has been redacted. Be sure that you have someone look and clear your program content that you're sending out to the CLE board. I know everyone does that, but just flagging it here. This is another opportunity to make sure that that version of what you're sending in has been redacted and that it can go outside of the firm. That's really important. And then with that, we include everything that should be in your provider program files, your digital or hard copy program files, your brochure or invitation or announcement, your timed agenda, your speaker bios, the complete set of the written materials that's distributed to the attendees at or before the program, because we know that's a requirement, our attendance list. And I pull the attendance list from CE Manager. I actually find it's very helpful to pull because everyone is registered, even though they're registered and validated, but you can pull a sign-in sheet and edit the columns in the version that you pull. And I use that a lot to send attendance lists into regulators because you can just pull the data that you need. So that gives you a nice clean attendance list. A sample evaluation questionnaire, which we generally send through CE Manager anyway, so we're able to pull that. And then a sample completed New York certificate of attendance and certificate of teaching. So we have to make sure that the program that we're choosing is one on our report, so it has a New York attendee, at least one, but you also want to make sure that you've selected a sample program that has a New York licensed presenter in good standing. So we put all of that together. We treat it as if it's going to be in one packet with a binder clip going in the box, and we PDF it into one PDF. We attach it and send it to the email address that's provided to us by the deadline.
Right, that's a good amount of information. I appreciate that. I caught a couple things, which is make sure you be choosy, so to speak, about the program, redact things that shouldn't be public, and you also called out a few areas that you use CE Manager for, including the attendance list and the evaluation. Certainly, people know that certificates of attendance are also automatically generated in CE Manager. And then, yes, of course, submission. I think it used to be that you put the big packet together and snail mailed it out, but we've got up here on the screen here that there's a particular email address to send it to. So just note that this email address is not the one that you probably got the email. Well, actually, I think this is the email address that was used to send the email out this week, but it's not the one you asked for normal help questions to the board. So this is a particular year-end report email, so make sure you send it to that one. And of course, the due date is coming up. I'm sure everybody's aware of that. And I wanted to point out in CE Manager, we've been talking about a lot of things today about the activity table and the year-end summary. If you need additional help, I just went into the help section of CE Manager, and in the reports area, you've got both the summary page and the activity table. This goes over a lot of things that we're going over today in detail as well. So these are areas for help. We're going to take some questions now regarding the New York year-end reporting. And I saw a question, I actually saw two questions. One was actually a general one about the recording of this webinar, and it will be sent out. Then there's a particular one in here, and I'm just going to read this aloud, and Brandy, Lee, and Eric, I'm hoping you guys will have some comments on this. If you have video conferences in offices with cameras, but still have web-based virtual attendees, do all of the sessions become format 2 and 3, or can the offices be format 4, but the virtual attendees format be format 2 and 3? I'm lobbing that out.
That's a good question.
Eric, what do you guys think?
No problem. That's a good.
That's comprehensive. I can read it again if you want. It took me a little bit to weave through it.
I got it. So I think the question is focusing on, so if you do have a course where there is a mixed audience on how they are attending the course, our formats are driven by the session formats in CE Manager. So let's say if you do have a session that says video conference approved for newly admitted, but you have, your New York office having that full video conference access, but you have your Chicago office that doesn't. It's that entire session cannot be a format 4, in my opinion. However, if you were to have a different session for each office where you know that the connection is going to be specifically different, you'll be able to retain the format fours for those fully interactive connections for, let's say, the New York office, and then those formats 2 and 3 for those live simultaneous transmissions.
Yeah, my thought here would be also depends on how you enter it in the system. If you're entering each location separately, the method of participation for that session or for that location is tied to how you're delivering it.
Great. Appreciate the person that wrote in on that. And we are going to actually move on to California. We'll turn our attention to the new California CLE rules. We're particularly going to focus in this webinar on just the credit hour requirements for attorneys that have changed in order for them to be in compliance. So let's do a little California dreaming, as they say. As many of you know, California is split up into 3 compliance groups based on last name, with an attorney being due every 3 years on January 31st. Group 2 is the next one to comply in 2024, and you can see those requirements here listed, and they're still the existing requirements, whereas Group 1 follows in 2025. And you can see how the credit hours required have changed for them in accordance to the new rules. So the changes are an additional hour in competence, whereas it used to be 1 hour, it's now 2. And additionally, that hour must be in prevention and detection. There's also a new credit type called technology in the practice of law. You need a credit in that. And another new credit type, civility in the legal profession, and you need an hour in that. Notice that Group 3 need the same new requirements, and they're complying in 2026. Brandy, actually, I know you had some thoughts about, you wanted to share about implicit bias. You want to talk about that?
So just be sure that when you are starting to plan your courses that you're delivering in these new categories, that you really look at the description of the implicit bias category. When the legislature created this requirement and asked the bar to implement it, it's not just the category, the description, it's who's delivering it. The presenter has to have experience in teaching lawyers about implicit bias, about this topic in this very narrow way. So just take a look at that against your presenters and make sure it's correct. You wouldn't just have, a group of lawyers inside your firm, young lawyers who are fresh out of law school, teaching from a standard PowerPoint for implicit bias credit without an additional experienced instructor there. So that's something that we've caught here that we're aware of. So we just wanted to flag that for all of you as well.
That's great, Brandy. It sounds like obviously experience is very important in that area. There are some additional regulations to consider for all groups. Most of these have been in place for a while, but just to point out, the optional hour in wellness is part of competence. So it is optional, it's not required, but obviously the California board is encouraging some teaching in wellness, as is our whole landscape in law firms. You can see the next 2 are actually talking about when there's excess credits in a particular category, and particularly with some of the new ones where they fall in the general hours. When thinking about these, tracking these CLE rules and the compliance for your attorneys, I'm bringing up now some visuals from CE Manager. How are these rules laid out in a chart for easy consumption? And I'm showing you here Group 2 because it's the next one. Note particularly the credit types listing here and the required credits. I want to point out in Group 2, technology and civility are listed, but with 0 requirements. And that is because when you're due on 2024 for Group 2, they're not required yet, but you can earn them now. So we did already drop them in. You can see this person has already earned some. I'm going to bring up an actual chart in CE Manager of a particular person. So I'm going over into my compliance area. I actually have a group I've already created, or a view, if you're familiar with that feature in CE Manager, where I can get right to my group 2 people. And I'm going into Francine's record here. Eric, I was going to ask if you would talk a little bit more about how the credits are applied.
Sure. So for the new credit types, because they're not required for Group 2, we had to set the requirement as 0. However, that's not going to stop someone from earning the credit, especially when it is a firm-provided course. So any of the new credits, such as civility in the legal profession or technology in the practice of law, when that credit is earned, it is going to apply to general. So when it starts being calculated on the chart, it's always going to stay within its credit column because it is a civility or a technology credit. It's going to apply in its respective column, but the one change you're going to see is that the credits needed for general will be reduced by the amount of credits earned in technology and civility. This way, your attorneys are not having credits that go unused, and make sure that they do get earned. The only downside is, as we all know, with California, there is no carryover, so they can't carry it over into the next reporting period. So it is going to apply to the current reporting period to reduce that general requirement.
Okay, great, Eric. Thanks for that. I'm going to pull back up the charts for 1 and also for 3. These they do have the requirements in because they will be due by then. So you can see that here. And then, Brandy Lee, I was going to ask you, when you're working with your attorneys and their compliance, do you find that they're able to absorb a chart like this? There's comprehensive rules, they've just changed. What do you see at your firm?
Generally, no. And I laugh when I say that. Those of us who deal with individual lawyer compliance with the tracking, looking at a transcript like this, it's a lot for even us to take in. And I do find myself a little confused when I look at a report or a transcript that has data that is necessary but not necessarily relevant right now. So to echo what Adam said here, to help our lawyers, our users understand what they're looking at. Well, I don't need prevention and detection of confidence right now. No, you don't. But it is here because the credit is offered and you can earn it. It just doesn't count for you right now. So there's a 0 in your required column, but you earned an hour of prevention and detection of incompetence. So you still earned the hour and it's going to apply towards your general requirement right now. So unfortunately, you can't carry it over, but it does count towards your total compliance for Group 2. So it is a little frustrating, challenging sometimes when our lawyers look at this. It creates sometimes more questions than we'd like, but it does give us a comprehensive way to look at it. And if there's ever a question with someone, for yourself or one of your very patient lawyers that you're working with, go to the 3 dots here in your admin view right at the top of the transcript. And when we expand this, we look at the application summary. I was actually using this morning with someone from the team, meeting with a partner who's retiring to show how some credit was applying towards their totals in New York. And so this shows you that for each credit earned in the type, is it being retroactively applied? Is it applying to the current period? Is it going unused, being that it's not applying or being carried over to a future period if you were in one of those jurisdictions? So sometimes this is really helpful. And if you have questions here, if something seems off, I have found that Eric and LMA have been really helpful in running that down over the years. We've been in the new CE Manager platform since October of 2021. So have seen this being developed in real time, and this is a place where we've been really able to dig in on where hours are counting. So this is something, if you need to print it out and share it with your users, sometimes this stops an escalated conversation because you can show them. Not that ever
That's a great call out, Brandy Lee, and I appreciate that. There's a download right here for the PDF of this. And again, this was once you're in a compliance report of someone over in the kebab, there's the application summary. Certainly there's a course listing as well. We're now going to open it up for more questions, but specifically about the California rules. And actually, I don't see any in particular. So if you do have some questions after the webinar regarding the new California, the rules that we've just gone over, certainly send them in to us.
So Adam, I actually saw something pop up, and I don't know where I'm seeing it, but maybe, and I think it would be helpful here. We know that the California Bar this week just sent out to providers information that PIMS is going away and that the new, system is online, and we would be utilizing it moving forward. So does City Manager plan to create that export for upload the same way that you did with PIMS?
Absolutely. So
Yes.
Yeah, Eric, I was going to say the good news is, well, you give the good news.
Yeah. So the estimated date for the release is January 8th. On that last update from California, we did notice they added an additional column to the report. So we had to go back and make some changes. We love California that way. So right now we are in testing. All of our prior testing for the report has passed. So we're just being cautious on this release as well. Once we add the new column, we want to make sure that's fully tested. No one's going to run into any issues because the PIMS upload is no longer going to be available. So there's no backup. So we want to make sure on when it gets released, there's no missing data. So yeah, the due date for the new California report is going to be Monday, January 8th.
Right, and Eric, it's going to be a report that matches the California's new attendance record upload template. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. Yes, it's going to match exactly. We also we followed the notes on the directions for the California report. When you export it, the file name is going to be exactly as California needs it. If I recall off the top of my head, it is the provider number first. Then I think it's the month and the year. I don't have it in front of me, but we tested that as well. It will export the file name exactly how you need it. So all you need to do is run the export, very similar to how you run New York. It is going to automatically be available in everyone's database come Monday, January 8th. So there's no need to request for it or worry if you're not going to get it. It's going to be deployed to all firms that actively track California. If you do not currently track California and you need it, please email support. We can activate the California license for you. And with that, the report automatically gets activated in your system as well.
Okay, great. And we have already released the updated California certificate of attendance. As everybody knows, it's automatically generated when you validate an attorney's attendance for one of your programs that offers California CLE credits. The big difference is just that the look has changed in it.
Yes.
To emphasize, it's already out.
Sorry.
Offer.
Mm-hmm. It's out, and a good rule of thumb for the just for this certificate, the old certificate is still available in the system, so you can keep updating your historical data. I believe if I remember correctly, the new credits went live the beginning of October. So as we know, we're still going to get some courses that we're going to be historically entering in well before October. So when you are entering in those datas in our system configuration setting, you can set up what date your different certificate templates will start and end. If you need any assistance with that, please email in support, and they can help you get those historical templates set up for the right dates.
Okay, great.
Hey, Adam, do we have a couple of minutes to answer some of the questions that have come in that are back to New York? They're not really system questions, but I think they'd be helpful here in this setting.
Definitely. Go
Okay.
ahead. I can't see them,
No,
so
I have
you,
found how to open this window, and there's some questions. So I thought it would be helpful as we have such a large group together to just talk about a couple of these things that have come in. Do we need to change the certificate template to the new version? Yes, you're going to update that to the new version in CE Manager, but that should be behind the scenes, right, Eric? Do we need
For New York,
for California?
yeah. So for California, there's a manual change that needs to be done. It was not done behind the scenes. It has to be updated. So if you were not able to get that updated, please email support. We can show you how to do it. Also, if I'm not mistaken, there is a help guide in the help section that shows you how to update your certificate of attendance. So you can always access the help site. But if you need help from support, please feel free to email. It doesn't take long. It's a 5-minute update that we can walk you through.
and I'm showing on the screen system configuration and certificate template. This is where it is. In fact, you'll see the quote old certificate and the new 2023 one. But again, there's a help guide, and we can help you on support further outside of the webinar. Brandy, you said there's a few more questions you wanted to go through.
Sure. Are California providers doing anything to track or save data in PIMS before PIMS becomes obsolete? We've been updating that information, speaking for us specifically, and other firms that I know of, other providers that I'm aware of, where we've had these conversations. Yeah, we save those spreadsheets. So we know what we've updated or uploaded and reported. I don't know how to export it, but I'm sure you could contact the bar if you needed help with that. They've been really great and pretty responsive lately. Let's see, there was another question about going back to New York. Someone had asked about the difference between formats 2 and 4. Format 2 on the New York report, and these descriptions are in the instructions for the provider report every year. Format 2 is live simultaneous transmission where questions are allowed. And those are live programs that are web conference delivered, your Zooms, GoToMeeting, anything like that, and teleconferences where people can ask questions during the program. And that's group, physically seated together, or individual, remote from Zoom in your home office participation. And format 4 is fully interactive video conference. That is video conferencing technology. I am at home on my laptop participating in a GoToMeeting. So this for me would be individual or self-study participation in a live simultaneous transmission. So for me, this would be group 2. If I was sitting in a conference room and we were using video conferencing technology to connect with everyone with a video conferencing unit, that would be format 4. So just to give a little difference there of what that is.
That's great. I'm going to go on to a poll, our final poll of the webinar. And just to say, if there's any other questions that came through that weren't answered, we will email after the webinar. But we wanted to put out a poll and open this up regarding California, because there's new credit types. So the question for all of you is, have you started planning programs with the new California credit types? Let's go ahead and open up that poll, please. We'll just give all of you a few minutes to answer, or a minute or two rather. It should pop up on your screen. So we talked about these new credit types: it's civility, technology, even some more competence. Starting to come in if you can't see it. People are thinking about it for sure. Got some yeses, some who have started planning. Got about half the votes in so far, a little bit more. About 60% of you voted, so if you haven't voted, give a whirl. And a few more coming in. Okay, the poll is closed, and the overwhelming answer was 73% are thinking about it, but not yet. 13%, yes, they've started. Some already, actually. And then about 10% have started planning. 5% had said that they're not intending to have programs with new credit types. So possibly you're getting them from other sources. Actually, Brandy Lee, I wanted to ask, do you want to make some comments about what are you doing at your firm regarding teaching these new credits? What have you done?
We're delivering them. Absolutely. I know that's the time of year where all of our, as providers, we're looking ahead to the California Group 2 deadline at the end of January, and are already delivering these programs. And we are accrediting programs in all of these categories possible. This week we delivered building an inclusive legal workplace for 2024, implicit bias, and practical debiasing strategies, just an example of one. So just encouraging everybody to just dive in. We had great attendance. I think you will too. Just follow the rules and it'll be great.
Definitely. With that, I just want to say to everyone, thank you for joining today. We are going to follow up with a recording of the webinar, as well as a checklist that will help you with your New York year-end reporting. Some of the things we've gone over today, did you do them? A simple checklist to help guide you. I want to thank my fellow presenters, Eric Romanushin and Brandy Lee Miller. And again, all of you who have joined today, have a nice end of year and keep conquering CLE compliance. So long.
Bye, everyone.